What is up, everybody? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 196. We are getting up there.
Almost as old as you.
Come on. Very excited because you might notice a number of things that are different tonight. We are, after 4 years, nearly 4 years of doing Ginger Runner Live, it has come to our attention that our equipment...
It has come to our attention.
Our equipment has been quite outdated. So we've decided to take it up a notch, take a step up, and we brought in new microphones, new camera, new color background. We're redoing it all, and I think we've reached like pretty much max level of greatness. I hope that the video signal and the audio signal are solid tonight. If throughout the broadcast you lose us or any of that kind of stuff, please let us know. I am, of course, your host tonight, Ethan Newberry, the Ginger Runner, and joined by
Kim Tashima Newberry, also known as Mile Longlegs.
And Kim, you're going to be in the chat room tonight.
I am going to be in the chat room tonight, and I want to address this right off the top of the show because people are already talking about it in the chat room.
Oh, boy.
It's your birthday tomorrow!
I was like, it's not today, it's tomorrow.
Oh, wait, it's not today?
No, it is tomorrow, and I'm getting older. But welcome to Ginger Runner Live, everybody. Our guest tonight is just a fantastic human being. Will inspire all of you to maybe run long distances or at least just get out there and run. He's got a pretty awesome story. We're going to talk about how we first were introduced to this guy, his journey through 100-milers and beyond, multiple types of events. He's an incredible human being. Really excited to talk to Ken Michal tonight. Recently, off of his big Hurt 100 finish. We're going to talk to him a little bit about that event too, which will be really fun. So sit back, relax, keep us posted if the audio and video are good. Everyone's saying okay?
Yeah, I think everybody's saying it sounds nice and clear.
Nice and clear. That's great. So welcome everyone to Ginger Runner Live. The show, of course, I'm now realizing I got to get everything set up and ready to go. The show begins right now. Ginger Runner. Yes. Welcome, everyone, to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 196. We're getting up there in age and in episodes. On tonight's episode, we are going to meet and talk to our good friend Ken Michal, who's an incredible athlete, fresh off of a recent Hurt 100 finish. He has a long history with that event, and we're going to talk to him about why this year was so special and his journey in the ultra world and what's made him the runner he is today. I guarantee you, all of you will leave this episode inspired and want to get out there and run either long distances or just run, period. So it'll be really great. And I'll introduce him here in just a second. Before we get too deep into the show, of course, I am Ethan Newberry, your host of the Ginger Runner, and I'm joined by
Kim Tashima Newberry.
And Kim, you're in the chat room.
I am in the chat room. So you guys, we are live. So if you guys have questions for our guest, remember to drop them in the chat room. I'll be pulling questions throughout the hour.
And we do have the ability to bring up the live chat room tonight, and that's going to be pretty fun. So we'll be able to get your questions asked of our guests, and it'll be really fun. Before we even get into the show, of course, we have big shout outs and thank yous. They're going to go out to a number of members of our community. Rick Bjarnason up in British Columbia, Canada, big supporter of the show, top tier Patreon supporter. Basically, it's going to help completely redesign a gingerrunner.com website. If you go there now, I don't recommend it because the website is baroque. There's code on the page. There's all sorts of things that prove this website is in dire need of some updating. So Rick and his team at cheekymonkeymedia.ca are going to help completely redesign it. We're going to be working on it pretty much this week, and I'm assuming it's going to be a long process, but in a couple weeks, we'll have a brand new flashy website to show you. Big shout out to Brian Sands, longtime supporter of Ginger Runner at the top tier of the Patreon tier levels. And Brian is an incredible runner who ran his first marathon this last year in October and is now currently training for his first ultra marathon.
Yes.
So I know Brian watches these shows every week. He's a longtime viewer and supporter, and I'm guaranteed he will have some questions for Ken tonight as well. So that'll be really great. And of course, Chris Lee in Hong Kong, top tier Patreon supporter, who has supported the show for an incredibly long time. He's in charge of creating this Trailblazer company out of Hong Kong that's showcasing the incredible trails that Hong Kong has. 15-20 minutes just outside of the city. They now have a brick and mortar location, which is pretty cool. Beautiful. Yeah. So if you get a chance, if you're in Hong Kong, they just had the Hong Kong 100 and a bunch of events that take place in that area. Or if you're just going through and you're visiting, or if you live there, go check it out. give Chris some love and a shout out. So that's pretty much it. But now we get to introduce our guest. I'm very excited about this. This man has inspired Kim and myself. We only really met him recently, really, like a couple years ago. And I'll talk a little bit about how we met him. But without further ado, tonight's guest, Ken Michal.
Yay!
Yay!
How are you, man?
Well, Kim, awesome. Thank you. And Kim, Ethan, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited. And happy birthday, Ethan. That's awesome.
Thank you. I expect you to wish me a happy birthday on the minute.
Oh, yeah, totally. Well, hopefully we won't be talking at midnight, right? But
yeah, right. Just keep texting, though. If you could just keep texting, that'd be great.
Totally.
So, Ken, you might know this, you might not, but we, Kim and I first heard about you, and you first started to really inspire us a couple of years ago at, of course, the Hurt 100, which we're going to be talking a little bit about tonight. But we were there with friends, and we knew nothing about the event, nothing about the race.
Oh, yeah.
And our friends basically said, there's going to be a guy that is running this event who has run it multiple times, and everyone at this event wants him to finish, just loves him to death. He's a part of the family. And I was like, oh, what's his name? And they're like, his name is Ken. You can't miss him. I was like, what do you mean you can't miss him? And they go, just look for the smile.
Yeah.
Just look for the guy
You'll
smiling.
know him by the smile.
And I was like, during a 100-mile race, maybe like smiling the whole time. And they were like, 100%, he'll be smiling. And I promise you, Ken, you were smiling the entire day. It was awesome.
It's not true, but yeah.
And it's been, dude, it's absolutely true. Your smile is infectious, and I know that you've had great ultras and less than great ultras, but one thing that's consistent is your smile, and it's helped a lot of people. At that Hurt in particular, it helped a lot of people because a lot of people talked about it. So what I'd like to start off with this show and ask of you is, where did you start, and like how did you get into the ultra world? What drew you in? And kind of where does your journey begin?
Well, the big thing for me, I was a big heavy smoker most of my life, and it was kind of just a transfer of addictions, really. When I quit smoking, I decided to eat whatever I wanted to eat as long as I wasn't smoking. And then I heard running was a good way to take the weight off. And so I was like, okay, and finally when it was time to give up, the eating, and I quit smoking for a while, I just started running. And at the time I could only run like a block at a time, but I built up. And I kind of found that I had a gift for long and slow, definitely, I don't know, just kind of, I started to enjoy it, and the rest is history, I guess. Yeah.
For you, was it, we often hear people get into 5Ks, 10Ks. Was it a journey like that for you, just getting into the sport and starting small, or was it ultra all the way from the beginning?
No. Yeah, I ran a 10K endurance run, which at the time was the hardest thing in my life. It was, I was like close to probably 300 pounds. I don't even know. It was ugly. And then I think I ran 2 half marathons, 2 full marathons, and then ultras. So, yeah.
And one thing that I love is that you're a runner like all of us. You have good days, you have bad days. You train your ass off, in hopes to finish in the mid pack or the front of the pack. I'm super inspired by you, man. When did you start exploring the real long stuff? 50 miles and above.
Oh, 50 miles. That was my first race, actually. Well, not first. Technically, I ran a 50K training race before that, but it was the North Face Endurance Challenge in 2008. 50-miler here in the Marin Headlands, and that was the first ultra, I guess. So it's kind of the big one.
And at that point, did you know that this was going to be something you're going to do for a long time?
I kind of figured, yeah. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the process training. I worked really hard for it, and I got it done. I finished with 9 minutes to spare on that. And then boom, I've run it now 10 years straight. And it just, I kind of knew, at that point.
So for our audience, to kind of give them an idea of how many events you have participated in, do you have an exact count of how many ultras that you've run? And that will include the 12-hour, 24, 48-hour types of events.
Right. I stopped counting after 100.
Which I love. Like, we've had guests on that, like, I have exactly 67
Yeah.
ultra marathons and 69, whatever. I love that it's, just stop counting after 100.
Well, I
It's
mean,
ridiculous.
it's whatever it takes to enjoy the journey for you, right? And for me, it's more. I don't know. I mean, it's more getting them done is kind of a thing, but keeping track of them isn't a thing. It's I like to do them, move to the next one. Although I do run a lot of the same races over and over again, but it's looking at a different performance. I mean, I like to say, yeah, like I've run now 9 hertz, but I think that the finishes are more important, or the getting better and better is kind of more important to me, I think.
I want to remind everyone that, of course, we are live. We're here with Ken Michael.
Mhm.
And Kim, you've already pulled aside some
Yeah,
questions.
there's already a bunch of questions rolling in.
Yeah.
Our first question comes from Kim Wrinkle, regular viewer in the chat room. Kim asks, Ken, how do you balance so many races with family, training, work, etc.?
Agreed.
What the thing is like, I think if you make it a priority, I mean, I don't watch much TV. I don't, I mean, there's kind of that joke, that book that's out. No, I haven't read it. That show, I haven't seen it. I mean, I go to like maybe 1 or 2 movies a year. The rest of it, yeah, I mean, it's training, it's work, it's spending time with my wife, Karen, who, amazingly enough, is super, super supportive of what I do. She's my crew at every event. She's a total rock star. And it works out really well that we do that together. Fortunately, I don't have kids. I've been really fortunate to be in a situation. I'm a career waiter here in San Francisco, it's great. It's a really big restaurant town, and you can make a career out of it. But it's also like, yeah, I don't need to work, 50-hour weeks. I can work, 30-hour weeks and do just fine. So that really helps as well. And it's just, but really, I mean, it's like anything else. If it's a dream, make it your thing. Just go for it, grab it with both hands, just keep going.
I think I want to start talking about your hurt journey because I think that's something extra special. Yes, of course, you've run over 100 ultramarathons. What was your first Hurt 100 experience like? What is it about this event that really drew you in?
For me, it was a nightmare. I do want to give a shout out to Uli Steidel, who kind of got me into it. Yeah, you guys being Pacific Northwest, definitely. Uli,
Yeah,
right?
he's actually, I think he's just down the street.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Every time we see Uli, I'm like, you're going to kick my ass. He's very good. He's a very talented runner. He and his wife both, yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's amazing. And Trish as well.
Yeah, Trish is amazing.
Oh, yeah, love them both. But so, at any rate, long story short, at one point I decided, like we met at the North Face Endurance Challenge the first time I did it, and yeah, he's been really great inspiration to me all through the years. And at one point I was like, well, I've run the 50 miles, I've challenged myself. What's next? I was thinking, like, why don't I run it twice? And he was like, if you want to do something that stupid, why don't you go run Hurt? And I was like, okay. And so I didn't even know at the time. I'm like, what is Hurt? And I looked it up, and this was before the lottery. And I was like, okay, well, I'll just throw my name in and see what happens. And then, yeah, I got there, and it was like, oh my God, all the stories are true. And they are. It's really ugly. And I honestly, I had no business being on that course whatsoever at all. And I got my butt kicked.
What is it about it that makes you feel that way?
Well, I mean, I was still at least 250 pounds at that point, which is a lot to drag up Hog's back, and especially in the heat and and then the big thing for me, I had a lot of IT band problems. There was one point coming back from Nu'uanu, coming in. I think that took me 6 hours just for that one leg.
Wow.
Yeah, it was ugly, and yeah, just everything locked up, and it was really bad. And it was a struggle for me. Like, I was not ready for that race. Period. I hadn't even finished 100 at that point. I finished a few 50s and whatever, and that one certainly. I mean, it was. It knocked me down a few pegs for sure, but it was also the best accomplishment in my life. I mean, I kicked my butt, and I managed to make that 100K in I think it was 31:20. So at 31 hours, like the course cutoff for the 100-milers is 31:30. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. But that was the thing. I mean, I pushed so hard to get that done, and I really, really wanted that 100K buckle. At the time when I started, I was like, yeah, I can run 100 miles, whatever. By the time I got up to Hogback the first time, I knew that wasn't going to happen. But I had determined I was going to do whatever I had to do to make that 100K happen. And it was when I got to the finish, Like, I mean, they heard me coming from at least a mile away, and I was just so, crazy excited and emotional. And that was it. Like, they heard Ohana and myself. We all fell in love, and
Hmm.
yeah, the rest is history. Really, I've been really fortunate. Yeah.
I want to just point out that in our live chat room, and you'll actually see her name here pop up in the live chat, Ann Trayson, the legend
Yay,
in
Ann!
ultra running. I can't I'm fangirling out. Obviously, I know Ken and Ann are good friends, and Ann is a historic figure in the sport.
Oh yeah.
Is putting it lightly. Ann, hi. Thank you
Yeah,
for
hi,
jumping
Ann.
into the chat room. But Ann has some very specific question as to why hurt, and you kind of answered it there, but it specifically with the roots and rocks. For those who may be unfamiliar with what the Hurt 100 is, it is a very technical, hot, humid event in Hawaii. So Ken, what is it about those roots and rocks that allows you, makes your mind want to keep going back to it? You know how much it's going to hurt. So why hurt?
Well, I do want to ask one question back to Anne, if I may. Why Western states? She gets it. She gets it. But
Valid.
really, I mean, for me, the biggest thing about Hurt is the challenge, for one. And to be able to throw yourself against something that difficult and succeed or not succeed. And I use this as an example a lot. Is I think a DNF at Hurt is more valuable to me than a finish at Western States. And I've done both, and both amazing for sure. But Hurt, like, you have to, even just for the 100K, you have to really dig deep. You have to really push yourself. And I think that the whole thing with the roots and the rocks and everything, I mean, one, you learn to run them super quickly because you have to. If not, Tantalus will put you in the hospital. But the other thing, too, is the greater the risks, the greater the reward. And so it's one of those things, like you go through and you just give it all and you push it all out there, and if you succeed, it's amazing, and that's what makes it all worth it, I think, for me.
So how many times have you gone back to Hawaii to attempt Hurt 100?
This year was number 9, so I've been really lucky in the lottery.
I mean, that's amazing that it's
Yeah.
an event that is so difficult that continues to draw you back. So going into this year, you know what? We actually have live questions. I want to, again, shout out everyone who is watching live and participating in the live chat room, including Ann Trayson. I'm freaking out. Kim, what do we have as far as
Love you, Ann. Thank you.
Yeah, Ken, you mentioned your weight being a factor the first time you attempted Hurt. Gil in the chat room asked, Ken, how did you drop the weight? Just running or watching what you eat as well?
Yes. Both, really. For me, especially this season, or well, I guess last season technically, I really just finally started doing everything right. I can't recommend her enough. I've been working with Merida Terranova for now over a year, and she just has an amazing way of explaining things in a way that makes sense and really helping you change your lifestyle, which I've done, and it's amazing. And just the differences in my body and my outlook on nutrition and day-to-day food. I've also been super, super fortunate to, I'm a product tester for GU Energy Labs. And this year I've been working with Roxanne Vogel and Meredith, not Meredith, I'm sorry, Magda Boulet, sorry, Magda, and both at GU, and they've been really super helpful with my race nutrition as well, and you're just getting everything dialed in. And then, of course, Anne is my coach also. So, I mean, we've been training hard. And I think that's the biggest success, is just working really hard with that and running my butt off to a degree, but having the energy to do that and just really focusing on solid nutrition has made a huge difference.
And that, I mean, that allowed you to, I just following your journey and knowing what you've been able to do in the last 8 months and shedding the pounds. How much weight have you managed to lose? And do you think that was a factor in you being able to complete Hurt this year?
Oh yeah, 35 pounds, and absolutely, there's no other way I would have dragged my butt to that finish line. Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. We have a lot of viewers that have very similar stories. And Brian Sands is a perfect example of someone who's been supporting the show for a long time, has lost dozens and tens of pounds and is still in his journey. Is this a life change for you? Is this something specific to now for ultra running and for the events, or how has this sort of changed your everyday life?
Well, I mean, that's it. I think the big thing too, and that's just one thing I really got from Merida's program, is it is a life change, and it is, like my outlook on what I eat and why is so different now. And I don't crave garbage. I mean, I'll still like I had ice cream the other day and I really enjoyed it. Versus before, I would do kind of like the yo-yo kind of whatever. And yeah, I would have ice cream and be a treat that I would have 4 times a week. And it's like, no, that's not a treat. But when I have it once a month, it's like, oh yeah, ice cream, and it's great, so yeah. So that's it. It is the lifestyle is the biggest thing, and finding a way to do that. And one big kind of thing that I got from Meredith that really helps me a lot is looking at it. Before I would really beat myself up for not having the willpower, I guess would be the thing, and just like, oh, I mean, I can't keep myself from eating that all these donuts that are around. I have no willpower. I suck. And it would be, like your self-esteem would go down, and I would hate myself for something as stupid as eating, and so instead you remove the need for the willpower. You don't keep that dozen donuts on your counter. Instead you keep a dozen, whatever, healthier nuts or something, whatever. And you get rid of the options that wouldn't be so good for you. And then when you do that, then it's easier to make the right choices. And what I found is interesting is because I've been able to fortunately pick the brains of a lot of, say, like the Antraisons or, the Magda Boulets and, a lot of other great runners. And I've seen that they do the exact same thing. They don't have great willpower. They just make it easier to make the right choices is the big thing.
I love that.
Yeah,
as someone who has a difficult time making the right choices myself, I think by removing maybe the bad choices, in my mind, I'm like, it seems so simple. Don't we already do that? But I don't know. I feel like there are better results out there, and Ken is a perfect example of someone. Let's go to the live questions. Kim, what do we got?
Yeah, since we're talking about food and nutrition right now, Amber Nixon in the chat room asked, what kind of food do you take on your runs other than goose?
Well, once again, being, a goo tester, it is goose. Really, honestly, Summit tea for the most part. But it's run specific, and it really depends on what distance and what purpose. Like for training runs, I generally go lighter, unless I'm going longer. For races, then it's heavy calorie and it's a lot of Summit tea, which I love Summit tea for racing, and the gels, those are the big things. I generally shoot for about 250 calories an hour, if that helps. I found also one other little bit of advice here is no more than 400 calories. And especially and I'm a bigger guy. I'm still like 190 right now. Because after a point, if you eat too much, it just kind of ferments in your system and your body doesn't process it. So you just end up gassy and you're not even going to use those calories anyway. So there's a limit and it's just going to slow you down. So, I mean, mostly gels, I guess would be the thing. And then solid food for the multi-days toward the end, and Coke. And Coke, a lot of Coke.
Yeah, I want to point out that Ken has also done multi-day events with the 48-hour, all these types of events like that. Is there something about those that you like more, or is the pain different? I know that you've done a number back and forth.
Yeah, well, the pain is different. Although I've only gone up to 4 days. I've got my first 6 day coming up in March. I'm stoked.
Wow.
I'm stoked.
I'm like, this show never ceases to make me just go, like, freak out a little bit. I know we have guests on this show all the time that talk about doing incredible things. I totally understand that, but I still can't get over people saying, yeah, I get to run for 48 hours, or I get to do a 6-day event and I can't wait. Like, it's awesome. Like, the sport is so wacky. It's great.
Well, I mean, to me too, it's kind of the ultimate in selfishness, really, because I mean, it's nothing but left, right, repeat for 6 straight days. My phone's going to be in my bag and off, my every outside distraction, it's just going to be, it's Zen for like 6 days. It's just, that's it, right?
Yeah, not quite, Ken. I know that we can say, yeah, it's Zen for 6 days. I've done 28 hours on my feet, and that's, there's parts where it's not Zen. Um,
if you do it right, though, it can be. And I think that's
yeah.
like, even hurt this year, like I had so many things just go wrong. I mean, I finished in 36:21 and, which is ridiculous, but it was just like, it was. I mean, looking back, the gun went off and I finished, and everything else was just kind of filler. And the more you do it, the more you can go longer and longer and longer. And that time just flies. So it's cool, fun stuff.
Yeah, and I guess if you zoom out just for a second and you realize if you're out there for 100 miles and it's 24 to 48 hours or whatever, however long it takes you, in the whole scheme of life, it really is. I mean, it's a fraction of a moment. So
Exactly.
In the moment, it's hard to think that wide. But I know looking back on my 100-mile experience, it's like, oh, it was a flash in the pan.
Right.
A lot happened in that flash in the pan, but it's certainly, in retrospect, like, yeah, why couldn't I just zen out for 6 days?
Yeah.
It's. I think that mindset's kind of interesting. Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, I just want to read. It's a comment from Brian Sands, who we mentioned a little bit earlier here. Brian Sands says, "Wow, Ken, what an inspiration! I see a lot of things in you that I see in myself, though I am definitely a few years behind. Thanks for such an inspiration."
Oh, well, thank you, Brian. Thank you, definitely, and keep at it. That's awesome, and just chase it. Just chase it. Really, I mean, that's the only thing you can do.
No doubt. You mentioned hurt. You mentioned this most recent year. I want to talk about this year's event because you have a number. You have a number of no finishes at hurt. You do have a couple of very memorable. I've been told stories of your memorable finishes and stuff like that there. But this year in particular, how did you train going into this event different than years previous? How did you get over that mental hump specifically of I'm going into an event that I have finished less than I have not finished, and like just getting over that is, I mean, that takes a huge amount of mental strength. So how were you able to get over that in your training?
Well, I mean, the big thing in the training, how it was different is I started training specifically for hurt even before the lottery. It was a good 7+ month training block where it was just everything that I did had the specific intention of this is going to be a hurt training run. This is going to be, for hurt. This is how we're going to build up. I mean, it was just everything was very focused and very specific. I started my sauna training at the beginning of November, et cetera, and just it kind of really kept flying through. I stacked a lot of long races in to use them as supported training runs. Maybe too many, but it was fun, and then just smashed PR after PR after PR, and just kept really doing well there. And then once I got to the race, it was just kind of like, okay, I've done this before, and I knew I kind of had a dream of 30 hours, and I was thinking realistically that would be in my wheelhouse. I don't know for sure after especially this year, I did make a lot of really costly mistakes. And I blew up pretty bad. But it's I don't know if I had executed well if I would have been in that shape this year. But I think next year definitely even good execution, and I keep building off of this fitness. I got it. Gosh darn
it. We have another guest in our chat room. Ken bringing in some of the heavy hitters. It's pretty great. Ken is obviously well loved in the community.
Yes.
Thank you.
Victor Ballesteros is in the
Victor!
chat room.
Yeah.
Victory Sports Design founder and creator, and right there. It's awesome. Go ahead, Kim.
I was going to say I have a question from Victor pulled aside and starred, and I don't know if it's the same thing that you were going to ask as well. Yeah, that's the one.
Let's do that.
Yeah, so Victor asked, Ken, what's the darkest place you've gone to within yourself at an event, and how did you get through it?
Oh, man. I mean, there's been some self-doubt moments. I mean, I have to be honest. As much as I always seem like the happy guy on the course, there are some ugly times when it's like, what am I doing here? I mean, this isn't me. This isn't who I am. I'm not an athlete. I'm not. And it took many years before I can call myself an athlete. It's. I don't know, even when you compare yourself, it's easy to look and say, hey, why don't I run like Victor runs, and why can't I be a Victor? And it's like, well, frankly, I mean, we're all in different places in our journey. And that comparison is what gets you in trouble. So I think that's it when you stop looking. But for me, yeah, it would usually be kind of dark points in races where I would kind of have that doubt. And, I think the way you get through it is just to keep plugging away, keep left, right, repeat until you're done, and eventually the more you power through these things, the more you realize that, hey, you know what? Victor and I are two different people. Victor has never run a 48-hour race. I've won a 48-hour race. So it's totally different
And
worlds.
set a
So
course record too.
Yeah, crazily enough.
Which is awesome. It's
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah. It's weird, I'll tell you that, but it was fun. It was really, really fun, and I want to do more of that. That was a blast. So it's just keep working at it. But I think that's just the understanding that we're all in different places, and comparison really is the devil. I mean, it's I'll never. I'm never going to break the course record at Hurt, for instance. Let's be totally honest. Gary set the bar pretty high, but I can definitely beat my time there. If I keep getting in, lottery God's willing.
I appreciate what you just kind of talked about, Ken, as far as comparing yourself to others and how it's easy to do, but I think it's important to like mental health and everything to not necessarily do that. We talk about it on the show a lot about how all of us are at different points in our journey. In my ultra running world, I look back on who I was 2 years ago and what I was able to do, and things have changed, but comparing yourself to others it's never beneficial because they are at a point in their journey and you're at a separate point
but
in
it's
yours.
also something that's so easy to do,
So
especially
easy.
with all the social media and Strava and that kind of stuff going around too. So
with this year's Hurt, we talked with Yassine Daboun 2 weeks ago when he was running it, and he mentioned the text that went around to everyone in Hawaii, the missile text. So what I'm really curious about is you're probably already hitting lows. You talked about blowing up at Hurt, like I'm assuming it was the heat, nutrition, or something.
Oh yeah, no, that was much later. But
okay, I'm just curious, like how did that play out for you and your crew when you receive a text like that? Were you on the course? Were you at an aid station? How did that play out, and how did that affect your day?
Crazily enough, I mean, yeah, it was definitely a factor on this one, that's for sure. The biggest thing for me is I made it through the aid station where they stopped everyone before the alert. So yeah, I mean, I was out on the course and I had no idea. I had even come into the next aid station after everything had calmed down. Karen, at the time of the alert, was back in the house and got it and was like, well, okay, he's on the course, I guess, whatever, he's happy, and that was it. So when I got to the aid station at New Wanu, she was like, I'm sorry. And I'm like, okay, there's nothing to be sorry about. I need ice and let's get moving. I got to get moving, whatever. I'm like, just focus. We've got work to do. And then, I'm like, whatever there is to be sorry about, it doesn't matter now. And, let's talk about it after the race, unless it's going to affect the race right now. And she's like, no, we're good. And I'm like, okay, let's go. And then as I was coming out of the aid station, another friend of mine who was detained at the aid station was coming in. And she, out of the blue, for me, like I have no idea what's going on at all. And she comes up and she's like, do you think they're going to extend the cutoff? And I'm like, what? Why would they extend the cutoff? That makes no sense. And she's like, well, because of the missile. And I'm like, what missile? What are you talking about? And so and we're out on the course. And, it probably might have been better or worse if I had a phone on me. I don't know. But the way she explained it was kind of this weird telephone game thing, where it was talking about the missile alert that was a drill, but not a drill, but whatever, false alarm. But what I heard was that a missile had flown over the island of Hawaii and missed by 2 minutes. Oh. And so and I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah. And they're like, missile? And she's like, yeah, missile. I'm like, but it's over, right? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, there's nothing we can do about it, right? And she's like, yes. I was like, yeah, I don't know about the cutoff, but this is an ultra. Control what you can control and let the rest go. I have no controls over missiles. I'm going to keep going. But then it was worse though too, because after that it really started to sink in. And I'm like, somebody shot a missile over Hawaii. And I kept thinking back to like North Korea and what they've been doing, shooting over Japan, right? But I'm thinking also of reading, I do not want to make this political, don't even start, but reading reports of Trump's aides making plans to tackle him, to keep him away from the button in this sort of situation. And so that's going through my head as I'm running along the trails. And I'm like, oh man, this is I'm thinking like, okay, at this point, he's been seemingly itching for an excuse to fire a nuke, right? And I'm like, at this point, if somebody shot a missile over Hawaii, there has to be retaliation. There has to be, I'm like, so at this point, I'm running along and thinking, well, North Korea's gone at the very least. And now we just have to wait and see if like Russia is going to respond or China or what's going to happen. And I'm like thinking though, I'm like, okay, well, I'm at my favorite race on my favorite trails, but I'll get DQ'd if Karen comes out here with me. So what can I do? And that was it. And then I got to the nature center and I was like, okay, Karen, everything's okay with the missile thing, right? And she's like, yeah, we're all good. I was like, okay. And I get back on the trails, but my brain's still going, and finally I get into, because that's the other thing too, is she's in race mode as well. She's like,
Yeah.
we'll talk about it later, we're okay. Here's your bottles, let's go. And so finally I get back into paradise. And so now, like, what, a good 14 miles later, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm struggling here. I need some sort of closure or something with this. What happened? And then she told me, and I was like, okay, cool. And I was able to let it go. But yeah, for several hours, it did kind of get to me a little bit. It was pretty weird, that's for sure.
When we talked to Yassine about it, I was like, I can't fathom
Right.
that.
Oh yeah.
This awareness that something is going on, but yet you're in the race, and
Yeah.
And not just a race, but like 100-mile
yeah, like
race.
100-mile race. So you're already a little delusional. I know this was, I guess, early on.
Oh no,
but...
the first loop. So if anybody was delusional in the 20, I mean, yeah, it happened at like the 7 mile point ish. So yeah, it's.
Well, I mean, there's the other side of that of like when you find out news like that or some sort of weird thing that kind of messes up your day early. How does that affect the long term? But I mean, at least you were able to find out hours later that everything was fine. It's incredible.
Well, you recover and you have fun with it. Like I do have on the awards. This is actually kind of funny. At the awards for the winners, they put if I can get this up here, a missile on their awards at the last minute.
I love that they have a sense of humor. The Ohana out of the hurt.
Yeah, right? And what else can you do with that?
It's so great. So let's talk then a bit about the lows. You encountered them. How severe were these lows compared to other events that you've done? And you are, people are talking about your catchphrases and your slogans all day, Ken. And how did those mantras help you get through the challenging lows?
And can you also talk about the all day mantra, because people are asking about that as well?
Perfect. Well, let's break that up a little bit too. Let's talk about all day first, I guess, because that's a big thing, and it's an entirely different story. I do have to back in the smoking days, and actually, when I was trying to quit smoking, I was working on it with a friend of mine, a personal trainer, Eric Stein, who probably isn't even listening, but he's a huge Eagles fan. He has been like hardcore Eagles fan for like all his life, for as long as I've known him. So congratulations, Eric. I have to say that. But one day we're in the gym and he's working me hard. And it was one of those things like, without too many details, I guess we'll keep it short. But basically, apparently I was ghost light and just looking like I was going to puke after like, this big crazy set. And he looks at me, he's like, "You all right? You're not going to puke in my gym, are you?" And I just look up, like I'm dying. And I'm just like, look up and I'm like, I can do this all day, Eric. And that was it. It just spiraled out of control from there. And, at the gym, I was like coming in norm for cheers. I'd walk into the gym and be like, all day, and that was it. It was just downhill from there. And it became kind of me, like my mantra, my slogan, my war cry. I mean, it was just kind of who I am. It was awesome. And then low points that hurt, crazily enough. I mean, the missile thing was definitely, it was a weird point, because it was something like it took away a lot of focus. Like it was just a weird unknown. It wasn't like I was kind of, it was just like, and I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know how to process it on the course. So it was one of those things. And I kept trying to shove it aside, but I just couldn't let it go. Was one of those things, which I don't know, maybe it's a failing in me, or I guess maybe it's a good character during a missile crisis being launched over the island, as I had thought. So yeah, who knows? But that was actually, weirdly enough, the lowest point, and I think it's because I've experienced so many things, and also because I was very confident in my training this year. The worst thing, and this is really bad, sorry, my fault. I usually well, I did. I bring 2 hydration packs with me. So Karen could just switch them at the aid stations. I don't have to wait to fill them. It's very, very good idea, quick and efficient for folks. And then at the very first time when I put them on at night, I went up Hogsback or whatever. I don't even know where I put them on. And it wasn't Hogsback. It was coming out of New Orleans. And I realized there was a leak in my hose, and it was very hard to get fluids out. And so by the time I got back into Nature Center, I was very dehydrated and I was in trouble. And it was ugly. And I was like, okay, when I got there, I was like, I'm in a bad place. My stomach has gone south because I haven't been drinking. And I need to spend a little time in the aid station. I sat there for like 10 minutes, which was, where I'm at these days is crazy. And yeah, I was like, okay, we're going to put myself together, grabbed my pack and went back out. And when I got to the top of Hogsback, realized that I had grabbed the same empty pack. And so it was, after that, it was over.
No. Oh, man.
It was nuts. And at that point, my stomach had totally shut down. And I crawled. I went probably 60 miles on maybe 600 calories of Coke, water, and willpower. Wow. And it was insane. I didn't even know I could do that. But then a lot of it too was I've been working a lot on like kind of the fat adaptation over the year. So that helped a lot, but it was just something I was actually almost thankful for in the end, because now I know I can go to that place, that I can dig that deep. I definitely don't recommend it. Don't do anything that dumb, people. Trust me, it hurts.
I was just going to add a little caveat, like what you're hearing is Ken's experience. Try it on your own if you want, but the results might vary.
Yeah.
Oh, it'll suck. Trust me.
Well, I mean, this is incredible, man. Like, I mean, we talk to people all the time that go through lows, and I understand that in ultras, everyone is going to get it at some point. It's par for the course. What is in this case, what did you do to get through it? Were you ever able to right the ship? Obviously, you got the event done. You finished, but how did you get through it?
Well, I mean, that's it. Like, they say like ultra running is 90% mental and the other 10% is mental. And that was it. I knew the only kind of time I had, like on the 4th loop, after everything had totally crashed and things were getting really ugly, I had wondered to myself, like, do I have enough time? I knew like I needed to make the first cutoff with a half-hour cushion with the way I was moving. Like I knew I needed 3 hours or 3.5 hours or whatever it was to get to Paradise. And so I worked really hard, and I want to say thank you to Christy Bentalovoglio, I'm butchering your last name, I'm sorry, who paced me from Paradise to, from Nu'uanu to the Nature Center. Just out of nowhere, she was just like, okay, he needs help, we'll get him in there. And the poor thing, I pushed her so hard on that too, to make that half-hour cutoff. And she was such a trooper. But yeah, I mean, she hung on really hard, and I almost dropped her. Which actually, that kind of did feel a little nice too, guiltily, but it was just like, yeah, I mean, I was struggling. But once I knew we'd get into that with that half-hour buffer, that I would be okay, And I have to say, Mallory Young, local gal, paced me for the 5th loop, just jumped in. We had never met, and we are kindred spirits, let me tell you. She's amazing. Fun story. I mean, besides the fact that she just knew exactly what we needed to do, when we needed to do it, pushed me in all the right ways. It was just, we had so much fun on the trails, but we worked so hard at the same time. She just understood. But at one point we're going along, and it's just the funniest thing ever. She's behind me, and she's like, oh, I've got this thing that may help. I don't know. It's just something that works well for me. Whenever things get rough, I just say to myself, all day. I didn't even say anything. I got on my singlet. I have, all day on there. And I just turned around and went, what?
You're like, that's weird.
Yeah,
that's mine as well.
But that was it. I mean, it was just like everything. We were just like, boom, just like, 2 of the same people, just in different lives or something. It was awesome. She was so amazing. And we hammered that last loop. My God. I mean, I've dug deep before, but I've never dug as deep for as long as we did. I mean, we were talking hours of just all out hammering to make it to that finish. And a lot of that was because of Mallory too. I mean, I don't know. I mean, my ego says that, yeah, maybe I would have finished on my own if I was by myself. But, really honestly, if I was by myself, I'd probably still be out there 3 weeks later.
I mean, it's a testament to what friends and pacers and crew
Yeah,
can really do
absolutely.
to get you back on track. Again, we are live. We have a bunch of live questions. The chat room is
Let's keep
nice
going on
and
this.
active. Kim, what did you got?
Yeah, we have tons of questions about your training.
Mhm.
So maybe we'll take a couple of those now. We have Chris Thornley in the chat room, and Chris
Hi,
asks,
Chris.
do you prefer to train alone or with others?
Chris Thornley of Squirrels Nut Butter. Big shout out,
Squirrels Nut
man.
Butter? Yeah,
Really good stuff. Go for it.
definitely. Well, I prefer to train with Squirrels Nut Butter, Chris.
Ken just dropping the sponsor plugs tonight. Ken.
Yeah, always first. No, but seriously, I do. Typically, it depends on the purpose of my run. I like both for runs that really the work runs, like the runs that are really important to what I'm doing. I like to do alone. But I love social runs as well. It just really depends on where I'm at and what I'm doing.
Nice.
Yeah.
I just wanted to briefly talk about kind of the finish of this year's herd, because we know that the cutoff is 36 hours. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, but because of the missile panic, and they held people at an aid station for a long period of time, you were able to finish. And 78 finishers of this year's Hurt 100. Ken Michael was finisher number 77, absolutely crushing the final loop to get it done. Ken, like, you're talking about having to crank through those last few hours to get that final loop done. And by this point, this loop, you've done it 4 times previous. Is your 5th loop. I can imagine it's a nightmare because the loop is not easy to do one loop of. What were those final moments like for you? The last 6 miles or so from, I believe in that direction, is it Nuanu that you're coming from?
Yeah, you're coming from Jagged of Nature Center.
Yep.
Yeah.
What was that like for you? And what was it like to get to kiss the sign and ring the bell again after a hiatus?
Crazily enough, the sign, I mean, I was just so excited, and I pretty much just hit it with my face. That was it.
This is all I can do.
Okay, we're finished. But here's the crazy thing, and that was it. Like, it wasn't hell. It wasn't. I mean, it was hard. It was super hard, and believe it or not, I was kind of excited that it was going as well as it was. Especially because I wasn't eating, and because I had been out on my feet for so long, and I've been pushing myself that hard. And it was more like just Mallory and I. We didn't have time to play around. We didn't have time to think about how difficult it was. We didn't have time for anything else. I mean, it was, and this is, my 3rd finish, and the 3rd time I've had to run a negative split in the last loop, which I think is probably normal for any of the, last couple hour finishers. You have to go to crazy places to do that. For me, the last 6 though, coming out of, Jag rather, was just super focused. Like I didn't, and I actually kind of regret this because we were pushing so hard. One, I didn't make 5-minute hill. Actually, I fell twice on the hill, so we couldn't get up there in 5 minutes. I missed that, but whatever. But at the top of 5-minute hill is Jay Kent Bean's bench. Who was a member of the team back then, one of the originals, and they have a memorial bench to him. And Jay and I have spent many nights together at that race over the years in dark moments where I'd come down to the bench and be like, oh my God, Jay, I'm not going to make it. What do I do? And this year, I mean, I always make it a point to, come by and like at least pour some water on the bench, or, give a little kiss to the bench or something like that. This year, I didn't even realize until we were almost to Powell Flats that I didn't say goodbye to Jay this year, because every year I'm always like, okay, Jay, see you next year. And it was just that focus. And I was like, well, obviously we're not going back at this point, And that kind of sums up how the run worked for me. Was it just, we didn't have the luxury of letting it get ugly. We didn't have the luxury of feeling sorry for yourself or anything like that. It was like, this is what we have to do, and we hit it, and we hit it in all the right places. My intention originally, you have certain landmarks on the course,
Right.
and toward the end, in the last 2 miles, 3 miles, you have a road crossing on Round Top Drive, and then that to me was where I was thinking we would start my finishing kick. And I even communicated that to Mallory, but then right after the bench, it was kind of like, we're after Paola. Really, it was like, you know what, we got to move. We can't play around, and we
Right.
just we hit it so hard, and that was the cool part. Is like I didn't realize how hard I could push for that long. And it was just like I mean, probably sprinting, honestly, if I would, a 9-minute mile, 10-minute mile at best, if we were to look, but especially at that time, I mean, it was insane. And on those trails, we got to the big thing is, and it was kind of fun too, like coming out of JAG, we were in 77th position. And I never knew that at the time. I kind of figured I was DFL, but it wasn't until we got partway up and the new Wanu that I was like, there's nobody else coming in that's going to make the cutoff. We're last place. And I was like, and you know what? I don't care. DFL, great. It's a finish, But then as we're going, I start to catch up with, the guy that I eventually passed. But we're going along. We hit the top of the pipes section. And it's this gnarly, nasty, loose rock. I mean, to call anything nasty on that course, specifically to call it out, means it's just, it's super ugly.
Yeah.
And it is. I mean, it's great. It's slick, wet, and just really hard to negotiate. Steeper downhill. And we hit that with 25 minutes before the cutoff. And I want to say it's about 1.25 miles, mile and a half at that point. It could be wrong. But it was it. And Mallory was just behind me. I mean, she was just like, go, 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 go. No, we have to do this. You have to move. Open up that stride. I don't care. And it was one of those things. And it was like, it didn't matter how much it hurt. It didn't matter, because everything was dying. And we hit that sucker so hard, and I passed that poor last runner with like 1/4 mile to spare before that finish line, which I kind of feel bad about, but whatever. So we had 25 minutes out. I finished with 9 minutes to spare. So boom, we hit that section. I'm really kind of stoked with my speed on that. I've never moved that so fast in my life. And greater risk, greater reward. It's just, I really could have hurt myself doing that, and it worked out.
It's, I mean, man, I can't even imagine pushing through. It's a hard course. We've seen it. We've run parts of it, and it's like you said, when you call something gnarly on that course, that means it's extra bad. Yeah. I'm in awe, man. I know that your journey through the Hurt 100, you've done it multiple times. This is now your third finish, correct?
Third, yeah.
Which is just,
so I finished the third of the times I've started.
It's amazing though, man. Like you keep going back. You know it's a challenge. You still face that challenge head on. Regardless of how much doubt you have in your mind, you still give it a shot. And that's one of the, if not the main reason I really wanted you to have you on tonight's show, is because I am constantly inspired by your ability to go back to things that are difficult, that maybe haven't given you an amazing experience in the past, but you continue to try. And this year, like when we saw that you finished, we were elated, man. Huge congratulations to you on completing one of the most difficult 100-milers on earth. There's no arguing that. Hurt 100 miles through the jungles of Hawaii. Ken Michael crushed it. Nice job, Michael.
Yay.
But I do have to qualify too. It's an amazing experience no matter what. Especially being out there, and the 100K is tougher than any 100-miler I've ever run. The 100-mile has beat me up more than any 200-mile I've ever run. So it's just to be able to even do a loop on that course it's an incredible journey, and it's awesome. I recommend it to everyone. Although I don't want you in the lottery.
I
should throw your name in.
I will dovetail into that conversation. Every time we say the word dovetail, we have to drink.
Cheers.
Cheers. I said that only because I wanted to drink, because it is almost my birthday. But if anyone watching live or watching the archive version has any desire to run Hurt 100, you can always go and volunteer. The event is so welcoming to volunteers, especially mainlanders. We were mainlanders, and it was our first time to Hawaii, and they welcomed us with open arms. threw us right in there. And what was really great was that there's always an opportunity to pace as well.
Yes.
There's lots of runners that maybe show up on their own or with family members that don't want to pace, and so there's a great community of people who you can throw your name in the hat. Perhaps you can get a loop in there if you're there on the island for a couple of days. You can also take advantage of the trails the day after or the day after that and get in a loop and see what it's all about. It's gorgeous. It is brutal, but it is gorgeous.
Insane.
So Ken, a huge congratulations to you, my friend. I guess we need to ask Ken what's next, because I know Anne was in the chat room earlier and she's like, ask him about his next event. What you're obviously not done. What else are you doing here in the coming weeks and months?
In 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks now, is the Jackpot 48 hour. So pretty excited for that one. Should be a good one. And yeah, Anne is running. I don't know if that's what you're so that'll be fun. She's in the tracing the Ultra Odyssey going on now. Like, so all of a sudden she's doing all sorts of fixed time events, which by the way, she'd be a great guest on the show.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, and she would love to be on. So I'll connect you guys. That would be awesome.
That's awesome. That would be great. Thank you, Ken. To get the legend on would be great.
Yeah, definitely. Let's make that happen. But yeah, so she and I will be sharing a table at the race, which will be good because she is a great motivator for me. Do we have time? Can I tell you a great Anne story?
Please, yeah, absolutely.
Oh my God. Okay, so this one, sorry, Anne, I know this will embarrass you a little bit, but it's one of my favorites, and it's one of those kind of defining moments for me and something that really kind of shaped me. Headlands 100 a few years back, I got really, really excited, ran really hard, and consequently left a 13-mile trail of puke all through the Marin Headlands. It was ugly.
Sounds beautiful.
Oh yeah, it was fun. But after that, I was really dying. And I get to an aid station, and Anne had just showed up for her crewing shift, and I'm like, before that happened, I'm sorry, I should rewind. Going along, I blacked out on the run, and I actually, weirdly enough, blacked out while I was moving. And I went through a sketchy section of the SCA Ultra Trail, kind of by the Golden Gate Bridge, with like little twists and turns and rocky single track, and it never happened in my mind. Like, I just woke up past that section. It was really bizarre. Wow. So I was terrified. I came into the aid station. I'm like, Anne, I don't know what should I do? What would you do? And she was like, well, I don't know. I never did anything that stupid. You need to figure out. Yeah. She was like, you made this mistake, you fix it, you figure it out, you learn from it. And so, yeah, basically I got out. I was like, okay, well, I'll see what I can do. I crawled to the next aid station. I was totally dying, sitting in a chair, just, and she would come up like every minute and be like, here, eat this, here, drink this. Okay, now get out of here. Here, eat this. Now get out of here. And I'd be like, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, how do I tell Anne, besides, my friend Anne, my coach Anne, how do I tell Anne Trayson, that, hey, maybe I need a little nap before I get going, right? And then so she, best and worst thing ever, she comes up and she says, she gets right up in my face and she says, you know what? I'm sick of this. Are you a whiner or an ultra runner? Because you can't be both. Oh, man. To hear that challenge from Anne, I mean, forget friend, forget coach. Think, one of the best runners in history, and to have her just say that to you and challenge everything you thought you were. It's just like, I know I'm not a badass ultra runner, but I'm pretty tough, whatever. But to hear that coming from her, I jumped out of my chair. Like within a second, I was like, "Give me my effing bottles!" And boom, just shot out of that aid station. And I found a way to fix it and I finished. And actually, I wouldn't have finished hurt this year without that same experience, because it taught me how to not fix those stomach issues, but how to keep them at bay and how to keep pushing through that. And so thank you, Anne. I love you.
Are you a whiner or an ultra runner?
I love it.
There's no both. I would never want to make Anne mad. Like, that's one of those things like, oh man, she will put you in your place.
But I am going to reuse that line if I'm crewing or pacing for you again.
Same. Same.
It's gonna be jackpot. The two of us could be on the course the whole time, and anytime anybody passes, a whiner or an ultra runner, huh?
I love it. Another shout out to Anne. I think that's fantastic. She was able to jump into our chat room tonight. Maybe we'll get her on the show here soon. I'm looking down because I realize that on my phone I have it waiting for me. Ken, this is your first time on Ginger Runner Live. So one thing that we like to do with all first-time guests is put them through the gauntlet with the Quickie Question quiz. You are the first guest of 2018 to get the Quickie Question quiz.
That's true.
We've had 3 guests. He's the 3rd guest of 2018. But
take that, Yassine. Finally, I beat him at something.
It's quite simple. It is a series of very simple questions. You have to answer with the first thing that comes to your mind, and we'll move on to the next one after that. So give me the thumbs up when you're ready, and we'll just rip through the Quickie Question quiz. Okay. What was your very first race?
Run Wild 10K, San Francisco.
Favorite place to run currently?
Hawaii.
Road or trails? And I know that you will, rather than road, we'll do track-based events or trails.
Ooh, you know, I've already made the transition, so track. Right now.
Bucket list race.
Well, I mean, hurt always. As long as they'll keep having me, I'll keep getting in. But right now, 6 days at the fair.
Nice. Favorite running movie?
Ooh, wow, I'm even trying to come up with a running movie. Crazy, but I'm pretty bad at that.
The correct answer is anything on the Ginger Runner channel. I think that's
Cool
totally.
Or Cool Runnings, apparently, according to Kim. I agree. Anything Cool Runnings.
Olympic. Oh, wait, are we allowed to say that?
No, we're actually not. The event that's taking place in Pyeongchang in 3 days is what we have to call it.
Right.
You can't say the O word. I'm excited to hear the answer to this. Guilty pleasure TV show.
Just finished Peaky Blinders. That was fun.
Good choice.
Yeah.
Favorite pre-race meal?
Oh, man. Yogurt.
Post-race indulgence. What's the first thing that you indulged in after hurt?
So, okay, I ended up crawling into the shower with a quart of Haupia ice cream.
That's not bad. I just like the visual of like crawling into the shower, but I had ice cream.
I laid in the, actually it was funny too, because I laid in the bottom of that shower. I didn't even turn it on. I laid there for like half an hour, and then finally I turned it on and ran out of cold water just like that. I was like, no, I ran out of hot water.
Or hot water, yeah. And finally, I'm super curious what you ran hurt in. What are your current running kicks, your go-to running kicks?
Hoka Speed Go 2.
Nice. Good choice.
They worked really well too. I love them. They stuck to the trail. I would definitely use them again.
Nice. You passed. Congratulations.
Yay!
A+ score. Ken Michal, thank you so much for joining us on Ginger Runner Live tonight. Can you remind people where they can find you on social media if they have residual questions that they want to ask? Where can people find you?
Oh, yeah. Ken Michal. I do also, I should probably plug Running Stupid, if I may. I host the Running Stupid podcast. It's free in the iTunes store if you're interested. It's one of those things, I do it for fun. Never made a cent off of it. So, yeah, I just love it. And so there is a Running Stupid Facebook page as well. And that's super active with that, though. So, yeah, go ahead and friend me on Facebook. Find me there.
Do it. Thank you, Ken Michal. It is awesome to have him on the show. Finally, that wraps up our Ginger Runner Live episode number 196, unless you are a Patreon supporter. If you are, we'll see you in a couple of moments because we're going to do a post show with Ken. Any of those residual questions that did not get asked, we will ask them of Ken in the post show. If you would like to join us on Patreon, you just go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner. For as little as $1 a month, you basically get to get some really fun perks on the back end, including all of the post shows every single Monday. I think that's pretty much it. Am I forgetting anything, babe?
I think that's it.
You got it.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely, Ken. Thank you very much. You heard it from Ken, guys. We'll see you in the post show if you're a Patreon supporter. Otherwise, follow Ken on stuff on social media. And I always ask you if I'm forgetting something. I feel like I am. Get out there, train hard, race hard, to party the hardest. Subscribe to the channel. We're almost at 100,000 subscribers. Can't even believe it. I'm talking really fast. And I think that's it. All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Bye.